Hello friends, welcome to Guru Shakti channel of learning. This video belongs to the last chapter of class 11 textbook Indian Economic Development, that is Comparative Development Experiences of India and its Neighbours. This chapter highlights the development strategies of two neighbors of India, that is Pakistan and China. Let us begin with the kind of political power that exists in India, Pakistan and China. While India is a secular and deeply liberal constitution, with every religion being accepted, and our constitution grants freedom of choice and many other fundamental rights, Pakistan is a federal Islamic republic. Though people are the ones who rule by casting their vote, but Pakistan has witnessed both elected government as well as military taking over the control of the government. Hence, its political structure is described as militarist political power structure. China had been a command economy almost till 1978, wherein the government would take up all the major economic decisions. But now it has been moving towards a democratic system and paved way for economic restructuring. Let's start with indicators related to demographic profile as published in World Development Indicators 2019. When we say demography, the first under it will always be population. The number of people belonging to a particular country. Here, green pertains to the estimated population. It has been mentioned in millions. The population of India at those years stood at 1352 millions. China's population was at 1393 millions and Pakistan's population was 212 millions. You can notice that among the three at that time it was China with highest population. Next, the blue bar indicates the density of population. It refers to the number of people residing in per square kilometer of a country. It is arrived at by dividing population from land area. You can notice here that the highest density of population is in India with 455 people. China with 148 people residing in per square kilometer and 275 people in Pakistan. One has to keep in mind the geographical area that each country owns while concluding about this indicator. Next is the sex ratio. It indicates the number of female population existing per 1000 males in the country. In India at that time it was 924 females per 1000 males. 949 females per 1000 males in China and 943 in Pakistan per 1,000 males. It could be noted that all the three countries were not doing well in terms of sex ratio. Here is another set of demographic indicators. Here, notice that with 59% of people living in urban areas, China's urbanization transition was more, with Pakistan at 37% and India at 34%. The fertility rate in Pakistan was highest with 3.6. In China, it was 1.7. Owing to the one-child norm in late 1970s, which had been changed currently. Now, Chinese people can have 3 children. This change in norm was to avoid the drastic situation of having only aged people in future, as well as to improve the sex ratio. And India's fertility rate was 2.2. Next indicator, that is annual growth of population, had been 2.05 in Pakistan, 0.46 in China, and 1.03 in India. Moving on with a few economic indicators. Here, first we have gross domestic product. This graph compares the annual growth of gross domestic product. This data is from Key Indicators for Asia and Pacific 2016, Asian Development Bank, Philippines and World Development Indicators 2018. While India's growth of gross domestic product during 1980 and 1990 was 5.7, it was 7.3 during 2015 and 17. There was a double-digit annual growth of gross domestic product in China with 10.3% during 1980 and 1990, and during 2015 and 17 it was 6.8. Pakistan's growth of gross domestic product during 1980 and 1990 was 6.3, and it was 5.3 during 2015 and 17. Scholars have pointed out that the reform measures and political instability has led to Pakistan's annual growth of gross domestic product to decrease. This slide indicates which sector contributes how much towards the gross value added of the economy and expressed in terms of percentage. This data is from Human Development Report 2019, Key Indicators of Asia and Pacific 2019. In India, 16% contribution towards the gross value added was from the agriculture sector. 30% contribution from the industrial sector, and 54% contribution from the service sector. In China, 7% contribution towards the gross value added was from the agriculture sector, 41% contribution from the industrial sector, and 52% contribution from the service sector. In Pakistan, 24% contribution towards the gross value added was from the agriculture sector, 19% contribution from the industrial sector, and 57% contribution from the service sector. This slide indicates the distribution of workforce in different sectors of the economy and is expressed in terms of percentage. This data is also from Human Development Report 2019 and Key Indicators of Asia and Pacific 2019. In India, 43% workers were engaged in agriculture sector, 25% in the industrial sector, and 32% in the service sector. In China, 26% workers were engaged in agriculture sector, 28% in the industrial sector, and 46% in the service sector. In Pakistan, 41% workers were engaged in agriculture sector, 24% in the industrial sector, and 35% in the service sector. This slide displays few indicators pertaining to human development in these countries. In terms of Human Development Index rank, India stood at 129th position, China at 85th position, and Pakistan at 152nd position. Life expectancy, the number of years a person is expected to be alive in a country. Citizens of India had the life expectancy of 69.4 years. Chinese were expected to live up to 76.7 years, and Pakistanis were expected to live 67.1 years. IMR, that is infant mortality rate, the incidence of newborn dying before celebrating first year birthday. India's infant mortality rate was 29.9 per 1,000 live births. China's infant mortality rate was 8.5 and Pakistan's was 57.2. MMR, that is maternal mortality rate, the incidence of mother dying while giving birth. India's maternal mortality rate was 174 per 1 lakh births. China's maternal mortality rate was 27 and Pakistan's was 178. You can notice that China has done pretty well comparatively in all these indicators. Still more human development indicators: mean years of schooling, average number of years our population spends in school. In India, it was 6.5 years, that is, at least all the members of the country have spent 6.5 years in school. In China, it was 7.9 years. In Pakistan, it was 5.2 years. And the percent of undernourished children in India was 37.9%. In China, it was 8.1%. In Pakistan, it was 37.6%. This is the last slide with the graph. Both India and Pakistan had 60% of population who were using at least basic sanitation facilities. And China had 75% of population using at least basic sanitation facilities. And around 93% of people in India had access to basic drinking water source. 96% of people in China and 91% of people in Pakistan had access to basic drinking water source. Gross national income per capita expressed in terms of US dollar: $6,829 was India's gross national income per capita. 16,127, it was China's gross national income per capita, and 5,190 was Pakistan's gross national income per capita. And people below poverty line during 2011, in India, it was 60.4% of the population, and in Pakistan, it was 46.4%. Having seen few indicators related to demography, economic and human development, let's learn particularly about major implementation of People's Republic of China. It was established in 1949 with one party rule. Right after that, all the enterprises, land owned and operated by individuals, were brought under government control. Great Leap Forward was one of the major important campaign started in China in 1958 by Mao Zedong, the founder of People's Republic of China. Its main aim was to industrialize the country. Even in the backyards of their homes, people were encouraged to start industries. In rural areas, commune system was started. Here, farmers were supposed to form groups called commune. They would collectively together undertake farming. This campaign struggled due to few challenges, first being the drought that killed 30 million people and Russia withdrawing their professionals from China who were sent for the purpose of helping in the process of industrialization. Later, great proletarian cultural revolution was introduced in 1965 by Mao. This was to create skilled students and professionals. The main strategy was that they have to work and learn from the countryside. And another major development in China's economy was introduction of economic reforms in 1978 itself. At phases, reforms were introduced. One by one in agriculture sector, foreign trade, investment sectors and industrial sector. Private sector was allowed to produce goods. State-owned enterprises, that is the enterprises owned by the government, had to operate like any other enterprise and had to face competition. Dual pricing existed. Farmers had to buy fixed quantities from the government as well as sell fixed quantities of their produce at the prices the government fixes, and rest of the stock was to be bought and sold at the market driven prices. That is, the price that might get fixed due to demand and supply situation. In order to attract foreign investors, special economic zones were set up. These are the zones within the country wherein export and import are carried out comparatively at lower prices. Why was the reforms introduced in China? You can remember that India introduced reforms in 1991 on insistence of IMF and World Bank. But China introduced it as early as 1978 because they felt the strategies that were adopted prior to 1978 were not yielding the desired result. The per capita grain output in 1978 was the same as it was in mid-1950s. It was felt that failure was because of the strategies adopted which focused on decentralization, self-sufficiency, and shunning of foreign technology, goods, and capital. But it still helped them in terms of improving social and economic indicators. Because even before the reforms, Through the commune system, equitable distribution of food grains, massive expansion in health care facilities were provided in China. As a result, they did well in terms of human development indicators and demographic indicators. The reform in measures which were introduced was first implemented at a smaller level, a kind of pilot study. It helped them to gauge the pros and cons of the reform, thereby rectifying the cons. Later, it was introduced on a massive scale. The reforms helped them to grow rapidly. China was successful in raising the growth rate and reducing poverty. The percentage of population below poverty line at 2015 was 7%. The major concerns of China is that there is lack of political freedom, and its implications for human rights might be drastic. It is pointed out the liberty indicators must also get enough weightage, which highlights the condition of citizens in terms of constitutional protection, independence of the judiciary, and the rule of law. But it must be admitted and appreciated that China was successful in using the market systems without losing political commitment. It did create additional social and economic opportunity. They ensured social security in rural areas. Human development indicator was positive because of commitment to provide social infrastructure prior to reforms itself. Moving on towards Pakistan, it had introduced economic reforms in 1988. But before that, let's know what had been done for boosting the economy. Pakistan adopted mixed economy model like India. Import substitution. They discouraged imports and encouraged industries to produce similar products within the nation itself. As far as possible, imports were avoided. And to do that one, they chose the method of high tariffs on imported goods, and direct protection were provided from imported products that were direct competitors for any of the locally produced similar products. This had been their major foreign trade policy. Considering agriculture, the Green Revolution helped agriculture practice to be mechanized. More and more machines, tools, and other modern implements were started to be used. Government also invested concerning agriculture. As a result, food grains production increased. In matters of industries which produced capital goods were nationalized, that is, they were brought under government control in 1970s. Later, during late 1970s and early 1980s, they shifted towards denationalization and encouraged privatization. They received financial support from Western nations and remittances. Reform measures in Pakistan was initiated due to insistence of World Bank and IMF. But scholars of Pakistan point out that these reforms didn't help them much. It was argued that it led to worsening of economic indicators, with reduction in gross domestic product and gross national income. It was also said that though it seems like poverty is less when considering international reports, but when compared with the data of 1960s, it was noticed that the poor were reduced by almost 15%, but there was a rise again after 1980. There was a stagnation due to lack of good harvest in the economy. Most of their foreign exchange was from the Pakistani workers in the Middle East and exports of agricultural products, which had more price fluctuations, which did not help them in terms of foreign exchange. They were suffering in terms of currency pertaining to other countries, especially during the imports and exports. Pakistan witnessed too much dependence on foreign loans and found it difficult to repay. But it showed recovery tendency in 2017-18 with gross domestic product growth at 5.5%, which was better than the previous decade. Other indicators were also showing improvement, but their political instability, over dependence on remittances and foreign aid, and extreme fluctuations in prices of agricultural products were their greatest challenges. This slide briefly discusses about India. As this textbook is about India's economy itself, and most of the aspects has been already discussed in other videos, here little only has been discussed. Reforms were initiated in India in 1991, opening India's doors towards the processes of liberalization, privatization, and globalization. This changed India a lot. There were influx of foreign investments leading to creation of various employment opportunities. But still, there was more dependence on agriculture. The movement of workforce from primary sector to secondary sector and tertiary sector has yet to be achieved. Social infrastructure has to be developed as well as strengthened. 1/4 of the population still must be brought out of poverty. But it could be said that India has done moderately well. Notice that the data does not discuss anything related to COVID-19 pandemic, its impact on human development indicators, economic impact, and the measures that were adopted and the step towards the recovery. But this video marks the end of the textbook content of Indian Economic Development of Class 11.